Clara Jensen and Martin Hale were the faces of a quiet town, trusted, familiar, and seemingly ordinary, but behind closed doors their lives were anything but normal, and the secrets they carried would soon shatter Redhaven forever. The town of Redhaven sat quietly in the middle of rolling hills and dense woods, the kind of place where life rarely strayed from its predictable rhythm. People left their doors unlocked, children rode bicycles until dusk, and the same faces gathered at the diner each morning for coffee. It was the type of community where everyone knew each other's routines, which is why the disappearance of Clara Jensen would shake the town to its core. Clara was a 30-year-old schoolteacher, known for her gentle voice and her dedication to her students. She lived in a small, neatly kept house on the edge of town, where the fields stretched out into the forest. On the evening she vanished, she had told a neighbor she was heading to the grocery store, just a quick trip before preparing lessons for the following week. There was nothing unusual in her tone, no sign of worry or distress, just the ordinary rhythm of another day. Hours later, a local patrol officer spotted Clara's car sitting at an odd angle on a quiet country road about 3 miles from town. The headlights glowed faintly, casting weak beams onto the trees, and the driver's side door was slightly ajar. Inside, her purse rested neatly on the passenger seat, her phone tucked inside, untouched. The keys dangled from the ignition as though she had meant to return any moment. Nothing appeared stolen, nothing disturbed. Outside the vehicle, officers found a single set of footprints pressed into the damp soil. They led away from the road and into the dark forest before stopping suddenly in a patch of thick mud, as if whoever made them had been lifted out of the earth itself. No additional tracks were found, no broken branches, no signs of a struggle. It was as though Clara had stepped off the road and vanished into thin air. By morning, word of her disappearance spread quickly through Redhaven. Volunteers formed search parties, combing through the woods with flashlights, calling her name, hoping she might be lost or injured nearby. Helicopters scanned the treetops, while dogs followed her scent only to lose it abruptly at the same muddy clearing where her footprints ended. The absence of any further trail was baffling. Residents whispered theories, some suggesting a stranger had snatched her, others insisting Clara must have known the person she left with. For a town untouched by major crime, the sudden mystery struck deep fear into the community. Parents kept children indoors, and people began locking doors at night, breaking from the trust that once defined daily life. What disturbed investigators most was the speed of it all. Neighbors recalled seeing Clara leave her driveway just after 7 in the evening, cheerful and unhurried. By 8, her car was already discovered abandoned, the engine cooling in the night air. Within less than an hour, a young woman with no enemies, no history of conflict, had disappeared without a trace. That window of time seemed impossibly narrow for such a crime to occur, and it left the unsettling impression that someone had been waiting for her, watching her, and ready to strike at the exact moment when she would be most vulnerable. The town of Redhaven would never feel the same again. Detectives assigned to Clara Jensen's case began their work inside her home, hoping that familiar surroundings might offer clues to her sudden disappearance. At first glance, nothing appeared unusual. Her living room was tidy, with books stacked neatly on a side table and a teacup left rinsed in the sink. A lesson plan sat open on her desk, showing her meticulous notes for the following week's classes. Everything suggested that Clara had expected to return that evening, that she had only stepped out for a routine errand. But as investigators looked closer, small details began to unravel a more troubling picture. In a locked drawer of her bedroom dresser, police discovered a bundle of handwritten notes. The paper was rough, the handwriting uneven, and the messages short but disturbing. Phrases like, "The watchman waits," "Under the oak," and "Don't trust the circle," repeated on several sheets, as though someone was trying to send her warnings or instructions. What unsettled investigators further was the strange texture of the notes. Each page was smudged with faint traces of dirt, as if they had been written or handled outdoors before reaching Clara. There was no clear explanation for how she had come into possession of them. Her phone records revealed another layer of mystery. In the weeks before her disappearance, Clara had received a string of late-night calls from an untraceable prepaid number. The conversations were short, sometimes lasting no more than a minute, but they were consistent. Whoever was calling her seemed to be reaching out at precise times, always between midnight and 2 in the morning. Clara never mentioned these calls to family or friends, and none of her colleagues at the school recalled her behaving in a way that suggested she was under stress. Witness reports added yet another disturbing piece. Several townspeople claimed they had seen Clara near the abandoned train station on the outskirts of Redhaven just days before she went missing. She was not alone. A man in a dark coat was seen speaking to her, his face obscured by the shadows of the crumbling structure. The train station had been abandoned for decades, its empty platforms now home to rusted tracks and broken windows. It was a place most residents avoided, not only because of its decay, but because of its history. Years earlier, unsolved crimes had been linked to the location, giving it a reputation as a place where secrets thrived. Instead of narrowing the investigation, each discovery only widened the field of possibilities. The notes hinted at warnings, the phone calls suggested secret communication, and the witness sightings implied that Clara was willingly meeting someone in a place tied to the town's darkest past. None of it fit with the image of the cheerful, dependable teacher who had lived a quiet and predictable life. Detectives began to suspect that Clara had uncovered something or become entangled in a situation she didn't fully understand. Her disappearance was no longer viewed as a simple abduction. It carried the weight of something hidden, something dangerous, and something that had been building long before that night on the country road. As detectives pieced together Clara Jensen's final days, a darker possibility began to take shape. The scattered notes, the mysterious late-night calls, and the abandoned train station all seemed to connect, but the true meaning remained hidden. It wasn't until investigators began interviewing longtime residents that a chilling pattern emerged. Stories surfaced of a secretive group known only in whispers as the Circle. For years, locals had dismissed the tales as rumors told to frighten children, but the more police listened, the more they realized these stories carried striking similarities. People spoke of gatherings in the forest on moonless nights, of strange symbols carved into tree trunks, and of individuals who vanished without explanation, their disappearances never solved. The name, The Circle, appeared again and again, always tied to secrecy, ritual, and fear. Investigators returned to the abandoned train station, the place where witnesses had last seen Clara speaking to the man in the dark coat. A deeper search uncovered something long concealed beneath the rotting wooden platform. Hidden in the dirt was a shallow pit lined with scraps of decayed fabric. At first, it looked like discarded trash, but forensic analysis confirmed the fragments were clothing belonging to more than one individual. The most disturbing discovery was that one of the items matched the description of a missing person from 15 years earlier, a young woman whose disappearance had never been solved. Suddenly, the whispers about the Circle felt far less like folklore and more like evidence of an ongoing operation stretching back decades. Further searches uncovered carved stones buried near the train station and in the nearby oak grove. Each stone bore a symbol resembling an unbroken ring, sometimes marked with what looked like ash. Investigators linked this to the strange phrases in Clara's hidden notes. Under the oak no longer seemed cryptic. It pointed to a place of ritual, a gathering site that Clara may have stumbled upon. The realization painted a new picture of her final weeks. Perhaps she had discovered their existence while working with missing persons records, or perhaps she had been lured by someone she trusted. Either way, she had found herself entangled with a group that thrived in secrecy. Residents who had lived in Redhaven for generations recalled fleeting glimpses of hooded figures near the forest's edge, always dissolving into the shadows when approached. Some admitted that disappearances in surrounding counties were quietly spoken about, but rarely investigated deeply, as if fear of the group had silenced officials. The Circle, it seemed, was not a newly formed cult, but a hidden network that had existed quietly alongside the town for decades. Clara, with her persistent nature and curiosity, might have unknowingly drawn their attention by asking questions that others avoided. The evidence pointed to one conclusion. Clara had not been randomly taken. She had uncovered a dangerous secret that tied her to a group willing to eliminate anyone who threatened to expose them. The story of her disappearance was beginning to merge with the unsolved cases of the past, and investigators realized they were no longer dealing with an isolated crime. They were confronting a legacy of fear buried deep within the town's history, a legacy that Clara Jensen had accidentally stepped into. The investigation into the Circle began to shift focus as police tried to identify individuals who might be connected to the group. For weeks, detectives struggled with dead ends, unable to put names or faces to the shadowy network. Then, in reviewing Clara's recent contacts, one name appeared more frequently than expected: Martin Hale. He was a respected figure in Redhaven, the school administrator who had worked alongside Clara for nearly a decade. Colleagues described him as quiet but dependable, the kind of man who volunteered for community events and never missed a school board meeting. His reputation made him the least likely suspect, which only deepened the shock when inconsistencies in his behavior began to surface. Phone records revealed that the prepaid numbers tied to Clara A.'s late-night calls could be traced back to devices purchased under aliases connected to Martin. Surveillance footage from a gas station near the abandoned train station showed a man matching his build and posture purchasing prepaid cards late at night. At first glance, these were coincidences. But when layered with Clara's sightings at the train station and the coded notes, the picture grew damning. Investigators realized Martin may not only have been aware of the Circle, but could have played an active role in maintaining its secrecy. Further digging into his past revealed strange patterns. Martin had moved to Redhaven from another small town nearly 20 years earlier, shortly after a series of unexplained disappearances had rattled that community. His records from that time were thin, almost as though parts of his history had been deliberately erased. Despite living openly as a trusted administrator, his financial records showed cash withdrawals that could not be explained, often timed around the dates when missing persons cases were reported. The deeper detectives looked, the more they saw a man who had hidden his second life in plain sight. When investigators discreetly monitored Martin's property, they noticed late-night movements. Lights flickered in his cellar long after midnight, and on several occasions, he was seen driving toward the edge of town, near the Oak Grove, before returning in the early morning hours. These patterns matched the stories residents told about the Circle's nocturnal gatherings. The horrifying realization settled in that Martin might not have been a passive member of the group at all. He could be orchestrating communications, ensuring that the network remained hidden while manipulating the trust of those around him. What made the betrayal particularly painful for the community was the bond he had shared with Clara. She had admired his professionalism and often turned to him for guidance at work. If she discovered his connection to the Circle, it was possible she had confronted him or begun to gather evidence, which may have led to her disappearance. The quiet man who once blended seamlessly into Redhaven's life was now seen in a new light, not as the protector of education and order, but as the architect of deception and fear. For investigators, this revelation marked a turning point. The case was no longer about chasing shadows. The danger had a name, and that name was Martin Hale. Weeks of careful surveillance and investigation finally gave detectives the breakthrough they needed. A search warrant was issued for Martin Hale's home, a modest two-story house that, from the outside, looked like any other in Redhaven. The first floors revealed nothing unusual: family photographs on the walls, shelves of books, a kitchen stocked with the ordinary clutter of daily life. It was only when investigators descended into the cellar that the true nature of Martin's secret life became visible. Behind a wall lined with storage shelves, officers uncovered a false partition. When pried open, it revealed a narrow passage leading to a hidden chamber carved into the ground beneath the house. The chamber was cold, the air stale, and the walls lined with items that made the investigators' stomachs turn. Maps of Redhaven and surrounding towns were pinned to boards, each marked with red pins and scribbled dates. Old photographs of missing persons were arranged in careful rows, many of them cases that had gone unsolved for decades. There were folders filled with newspaper clippings about disappearances and coded notes that matched the style of the ones found in Clara's drawer. Most chilling of all was a small wooden box resting on a table in the center of the room. Inside, detectives discovered personal belongings belonging to victims. Jewelry, watches, scraps of fabric, each one tied to a person who had vanished. Among these items lay Clara's silver necklace, confirming beyond doubt that she had been brought there. The discovery electrified the investigation and horrified the town. Martin Hale, the man trusted with shaping young minds and guiding the school, had been living a double life. Evidence suggested he was not just a participant in the circle, but one of its central figures, perhaps even its leader. Forensic testing tied him to several of the objects recovered in the chamber, and his movements in the weeks leading to Clara's disappearance aligned with key dates marked on the maps. The once respected administrator was revealed as the silent orchestrator of fear, maintaining his role in the community while manipulating the shadows. Despite the overwhelming evidence, Martin refused to speak after his arrest. He sat silently through questioning, offering no explanation, no denial, and no hint of remorse. His refusal only deepened the mystery. If the circle was as large and as deeply rooted as investigators now suspected, Martin's silence could mean one of two things. Either he was protecting others still at large, or he feared what might happen if he revealed their names. Even behind bars, his presence seemed to cast a long shadow over Redhaven. For the people of the town, the revelations shattered their sense of safety. Neighbors who once greeted Martin warmly now struggled to reconcile the image of the helpful school administrator with the truth of the man uncovered beneath. Parents worried about what their children might have unknowingly shared with him. Every missing person case in the region was suddenly reopened, re-examined through the lens of the circle's possible involvement. Yet, amid all the discoveries, one question remained painfully unanswered. Clara herself was never found. Her necklace was proof she had been inside that hidden chamber, but there was no sign of her body, no trace of where she might have been taken after. Natalie Morales. Closing reflection captured the lingering unease. The crime was not only about one man's betrayal, but about a web of secrecy that had thrived for years in silence. The circle had been exposed, but whether it was truly dismantled remained unclear. The haunting uncertainty left behind was that Clara's disappearance might not mark the end of their influence, but only the beginning of a darker truth still waiting to emerge.